Welcome to Football Letter Live. Tonight we welcome the football letterman father-son duo of Charlie and Tony Pittman. Combined, Charlie and Tony never lost a game at Penn State when they started, a record of 45-0-1. Charlie helped lead Penn State to 2 wins in the Orange Bowl, and Tony was an impactful starter on the undefeated 1994 team that won the Big Ten championship and the Rose Bowl. We also welcome Michigan chapter president Brody Schultz, who will share what you can expect and how his chapter will unite Penn Staters this weekend when we go to our trip against top 10 Michigan in Ann Arbor. Football Letter Live is member supported, and we're so grateful to have your support. If you're a Penn Stater, you belong in the Alumni Association. And if you love Penn State, you're in the right place. This is Football Letter Live. Welcome into Football Letter Live. I'm really excited to get to our guests tonight. Charlie and Tony Pittman are here with us. We're going to talk to Brody Schultz coming up next. But before we get to them, let's welcome in, as always, my co-host, John Petishnock. John, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, Paul. Really looking forward to talking with Brody, looking forward to talking with Charlie and Tony Pittman. We were working on the script and, we're just, sort of like getting ready for another show. And like, we both just had to stop and think for a second and let's think about how fortunate we are to welcome on the Penn Staters that we do. And so awesome show tonight for the audience tuning in, and certainly going to lead us into a big weekend going to Michigan.
Yeah, I remember we do a run through earlier in the week and we have this private chat off to the side in the software that we use. And I typed in to John, can you believe we're talking to Charlie and Tony Pittman right now? Real surreal moment. We get to talk to a lot of Penn State greats, but tonight's going to be special.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we go out to Michigan. Our Michigan chapter is ready to go. If you're part of our chapters, out there, I know we have a lot of chapter volunteers who watch Football Letter Live. We want you to share photos from your game watch parties, from your gatherings, even if you send pictures, make sure you're tagging the Penn State Alumni Association on those pictures.
And it's been a busy week here at the Alumni Association. Our Lion ambassadors, really impressive student group. They hosted Haunted Valley last weekend, where they talk about kind of like the historical figures of Penn State, and they will put on a performance for the community, which is great. Of course, we've got homecoming coming up next weekend, so we shared that information last week. However, you can visit our website, our events website. We've got the ice cream social on Friday to 1 to 3. Guard the Line Shrine that night following the homecoming parade. Of course, the parade is going to feature a lot of our alumni groups. And of course, the Roar Tour at Michigan coming on Saturday. Registration is still open. It's open on the day of the event. And we're expecting 600, 700, 800 Penn Staters, maybe. That number keeps going up as we get closer to leaving.
Absolutely. A lot of anticipation for this top 10 matchup between our Nittany Lions and the Wolverines of Michigan. Welcoming us to Michigan is going to be our chapter president, Brody Schultz. Brody is a 2-time Penn State grad, 2015 and 2017. I mentioned he's the president of our Michigan chapter. He created the chapter signature event for the kids golf outing, which benefits Thon. He's was named to Penn State's College of Engineering 40 under 40. Was in the manufacturing program. Is in the manufacturing program for Ford Motor Company. Welcome to Football Letter Live, Brody Schultz.
Hey, everyone. Great to be here. Thanks for having me this time.
Absolutely. Brody, you grew up in the Pittsburgh area. When did Penn State kind of get on your radar first, and how did you become a Nittany Lion?
Sure. So growing up in Pittsburgh, as a kid, it was always kind of distilled in your mind that Pitt was the college to go to. Penn State was mentioned here and there, but a lot of my friends, they were all Pitt fans. So I met one of my very, very good friends, Ryan Weaver. He grew up in a family that was generations of Penn State students, and we just kind of started hanging out. And he was a very, very dedicated Penn State fan. So, he'd come over and hang out on Saturdays, and instead of playing catch or football outside, we'd be watching the Penn State game. And it kind of all started right then and there, just starting to fall in love with Penn State football, the culture around Penn State, and just kind of seeing the generational Penn Staters that were part of his family and how much they interacted with each other. So right then and there, it kind of sparked my interest for Penn State. And then once I decided that I wanted to be an engineer and found out how well ranked the Penn State College of Engineering is, I definitely jumped on that and decided to start my education at Penn State Beaver, where I met some of my long-term, lifelong friends. And then that transitioned into going to University Park, joining the Alumni Association and the Blue and White Society, being involved with them, networking with everybody in the Alumni Association, and then also brought the opportunity to meet my wife as well. So now her and I are both married up in Michigan and lifelong Penn Staters.
Hey, Brody, you know what Penn State students and Pitt students both have in common, right?
What's that?
They all applied to Penn State.
It's always great cracking jokes about that.
Absolutely.
All right, I guess I'm in the position where I have to follow that up now. And so, Brody, you're one of our top volunteers, chapter president of Michigan. You were involved with Thon as a student, as Paul mentioned in your intro, creating that signature event for the Michigan chapter. How did Thon impact your student experience, and how has it continued to impact you as a volunteer leader?
Yeah, so when I was at Penn State Beaver, I met a lot of friends there. But then as you transition to University Park, some go with you there. Some may go to the likes of Penn State Barrett or something like that. But either way, when you come to University Park, you're kind of open up to a whole new group of new students that you're trying to fit in with and get involved with. And one way that I found that I wanted to get involved, because I was a big fan of community service and charity, was getting involved with Thon. And I actually first joined the Blue and White Society. Started to meet a lot of people there and ended up volunteering for the Thon committee or Thon group through the Blue and White Society. Doing that, I started to meet a lot more friends and able to network a lot more, and then started to fall in love with the cause for Thon. So both my junior and senior year, I was heavily involved with that, involved with canning, being one of those that stand in the stand for all 46 hours as well, and just enjoying raising the funds for the kids and for the charity. From that, when I graduated and moved up to Michigan and started to get involved with the Michigan chapter, kind of realized that there were a couple initiatives that we didn't bring along with us from University Park to help connect those alum back. We had our student send-offs, we did scholarships, we did game watches, but I felt that there was a need to bring the Thon aspect to Detroit and kind of involve that into our chapter, so those that do want to continue to volunteer for Thon had the opportunity. So ultimately, that led to different ideas behind how we could raise funds for Thon up here. And one of the big popular events are golf outings, since we have some great courses up here. So with the connections that I made at Ford and the other connections I made at the Alumni Association, we were able to get a few businesses in the area to start our inaugural golf outing back in 2018. And now we are going into our 5th annual golf outing this year. Having already raised over 80,000 that we've donated to Thon, and we're just going to continue to strive for excellence with that event.
Wow, 80,000. That's amazing, Brody. Fantastic work by you and the Michigan chapter. With the way the schedule has worked out, that Penn State's going to visit Michigan each year, either to play the Wolverines or to play Michigan State. Mm-hmm. How does that impact your planning and the other things that you might be doing during the season?
Yeah, so during the season, we always end up holding game watches. And during those game watches, we're always promoting our different events that are happening in the fall. Like I said, we do a significant amount of community service events, but we also make sure to heavily promote our alumni events, like the Friday night mixer and then your tailgate that happens on Saturday. We kind of call it the U of M week and the MSU week. We know every year that it's going to happen, and we've started to finally get into that groove of partnering with the local businesses and continuing to have our event at that business. So over the last couple of years, we've started to see more and more outreach actually for the event, and a lot of people are starting to sign up earlier rather than later. And in fact, this year we actually sold out the event. There's no additional space at the venue this year, so that was a first for us, and it's very exciting as well. But we're just looking for whatever we can to give back to our Penn State community up here, while also welcoming those into town as best as possible. And we're looking forward to continue growing this event each year now.
So Brody, moving to Michigan after Penn State, connecting with Penn Staters in Michigan, what was the role that the alumni chapter played in helping that transition with you, moving to a new area, and just kind of being able to feel like, okay, this can start to feel like home a little bit. I'm connecting with Penn Staters. What was the role that the alumni chapter played with that, especially at that time in your life?
Sure. Yeah. So when I came up here, I knew I wanted to stay involved with the Alumni Association one way or the other, whether it be volunteering back with events at Penn State or getting involved with the chapter here. And we used to have a large event that was a welcome event for people that were coming to Detroit and started their careers and stuff, especially because they're coming from Pennsylvania or anywhere really on the East Coast to Detroit. So getting involved with that, I really started to understand how impactful it could be to building my network, not only for professional growth, but also personal growth. And that just kind of reeled me in to get more involved and understand what they do as a chapter. And then also I started to find a hobby in doing the volunteer work and continuing to figure out how I could give back to the community as well and the alumni in the area, to just build a club that's fun, welcoming, and something that everybody has can look forward to each year, especially with like our pep rally events, game watches, and different mixers throughout the year. It definitely helped me get on a good path to start my professional career, and now that has also turned me into someone who is really excited for the future for the chapter, excited for the different volunteering events we have coming up, and also to continue our relationship with the Alumni Association back at Penn State and continuing to build those ties.
Charlie, I'm sorry, Brody, you talked about a lot of the programs that you're involved in and that your chapter sponsors. If there are Penn Staters here in Michigan that are watching or want to learn more about getting involved with the chapter, how can they find that information out?
Sure. So over the last 2 years, we started to build out our committees to really start marketing our chapter up here to get those involved that may not have realized that we have such a significant presence in Detroit. So we do have a website, psualumnimichigan.com, that we did organically build with one of our committee members. He did a fantastic job with starting to post all of our events so that everyone can see what we've done in the past and what's upcoming. So you can visit that website and sign up for a newsletter, as well as email our communications lead, and they'll be able to reach out to you with any information you're looking for. We also are starting to become more prominent in our social media with Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, actively posting on there, especially with our events. So if you see anything pop up there, we will have links there for you to go and sign up, as well as links to how you can sign up for joining a committee or just volunteering for a general event. If you visit any of our social medias, you'll see our link tree in our bio, and you can also click on that for quick access to signing up for our newsletter or receiving communications whenever we do have new events.
Yeah, that's great, Brody. So there are a lot of ways to stay connected to the Michigan chapter. We're headed your way tomorrow. We'll be tagging your chapter in a lot of our social media posts. So if you're following the Alumni Association on social media, you'll see what the Michigan chapter is doing this weekend. We look forward to seeing you. But before we go, we're gonna end on a fun one here. What's your prediction for Saturday? What's going to happen on the field?
Yeah, so watching both teams closely the last couple weeks, it's been some tough games out there to really compare apples to apples right now. I mean, Penn State played, a tough game against Central Michigan after coming off a big win against Auburn, and we all know that Penn State's notorious for that one game where they just don't dominate, but they come out with the win. And then they go and play Northwestern in a rain game that's just very tough to understand where the team's at. But then on the other side of things, Michigan also has not shown up against their two opponents the last 2 weeks. Maryland hung in there with them. And then I believe they played Indiana last week, and they hung in there too. So one thing's for certain, if you can stop Michigan's run game, I don't think their pass game is that strong. And the way our defense has been looking the last couple of weeks, I think we can come out of Ann Arbor with a win for once. It's been a couple years, but I think we could end up winning this one. I would say if we stop the run, I could see us winning pretty big by 2 touchdowns, maybe something like 28-14. But if it's a battle in the trenches and the run games are going, I could see it just being a field goal. I still have to say the Lions would win something like 17-14, but I don't think it'll be a high-scoring game overall.
Well, thank you, Brody. And we asked for a prediction. Like, we got a detailed game forecast. Yeah. And so I was going to send folks to the blog for the game preview. I think you got what you needed with Brody there. So thanks so much, Brody. I know Paul and I are looking forward to coming out to Michigan tomorrow. We're bringing our Alumni Association colleagues with us, and thanks for everything you do for Penn State.
Absolutely. We can't wait to host you. Thank you.
Take care, Brody. See you tomorrow.
All right. We'll see you.
Thanks, Brody.
All right. Well, hey, a lot of great things going on with the Michigan chapter. They've planned this sold-out event that we're going to go to tomorrow night that'll just get us ready for the big noon kickoff against the Wolverines.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about big games, our next guest, they know all about that. So as Paul mentioned in the opening, Charlie and Tony Pittman never losing a game at Penn State in which they started. As Tony proudly pointed out, first father-son duo coaching under Joe Paterno, who earned academic first-team All-American status. So you talk about the grand experiment, success with honor, as successful as they were on the field. And Charlie was also an All-American running back. On that team, All-American quarterback Archie Manning, a name some people might recognize. And so successful on the field, successful off the field as academic All-Americans. And we're going to get their insight on a lot of things. I know we've been looking forward to this for a couple months now, ever since we reached out to them originally. And so Charlie, Tony Pittman, we are so thrilled to have you on tonight. Welcome to Football Letter Live.
Thanks for having us.
So, Tony, we were talking a little before the show started. You were part of Joe Paterno's first recruiting class. What do you remember about that process, and kind of what was it about Penn State and Joe's message that made Penn State the school for you?
Well, recruiting was not as big as it is now. And we didn't have 5-star athletes or 3-star athletes or recruiting programs all across the country. We didn't have that. I made out of Baltimore, I made the All-Metro team, the All-State team, and the Parade All-American team. And I was just hopeful that someone would give me a look to see if I could play college football. I didn't have that many offers, maybe about 20, but I didn't want to move too far away from home. But then I got a call from Rip Engel, and he was announcing that he was retiring, and this very new head coach, Joe Paterno, was coming along. And I said, well, who is Joe Paterno? I don't think I want to entrust my career to a first-time head coach at Penn State. So I told Rip Engel that I wouldn't be coming. I was going to go to the University of Maryland. And then Joe Paterno and Rip both got on the phone at the same time, convinced me that Joe was going to be an outstanding football coach and wanted me to hang in there with my initial decisions. So I called Lou Saban, who was the coach at Maryland, back and told him that I'm going to Penn State. And he made what I thought was a fatal mistake. He said to me, well, if you come to Maryland, we guarantee you can start as a sophomore. But do you think you're good enough to start as a sophomore at Penn State? Well, right then he was doubting my ability, and I didn't want to play for a coach that doubted my ability. And I said, yes, I think so, and I intend to prove it to you. So I accepted and came to Penn State, and the rest is history.
So, Tony, how much of that story sounds familiar with your process? What was similar? What was different?
Well, one big difference is by the time I came along, Joe was not a new coach. You know, he had done a lot of great things, won a couple national championships, and the grand experiment was off and running. So my recruiting experience was a little bit different in terms of how established Penn State was, but Joe's principles were still the same. I had gone to a prep school here in the New England area, and the schools I was looking at ranged from Harvard and Yale to Notre Dame. Yes, I'll say their name. But, when I met with Joe in State College at the tavern, we were having dinner, and he actually said, well, I don't even know. What else can I tell you about Penn State? You probably know all about it. But he said, before I let you make your final decision, you have to do something. I'm like, what is that? He's like, you've got to go visit my friend Carmen Koza, who's the head football coach at Yale, because I think maybe they might have something you're more interested in. Maybe that's a better choice for you. So I'm like, wait, isn't this the recruiting trip where you're supposed to tell me all the reasons I should come to Penn State, right? But his view was he really wanted what was best for the young men he talked to long-term in their lives. It wasn't just about what can you do for me playing football over these next few years. So I did make that trip. It was nice to visit there. there was some blue and white there, but at the end of the day, I knew that Penn State was the decision that was right for me.
Yeah, obviously a good decision for both of you. A great decision for Penn State to have you both here. In addition to starting on the '94 team, Tony led the team in interceptions the season before. So we wanted to get your thoughts, Charlie, as a father and as a letterman at Penn State. What was it like watching Tony play at Penn State and kind of going through those emotions that you had on game day?
Well, probably like any dad, you have concerns for your sons when they go out on the gridiron to play football. But I think Tony had prepared himself. He was mentally tough. He had Penn State blood all through his system because he had been around Penn State most of his life. It looked like, to me, it was like a dream come true for him. And he was a very good athlete, a better athlete than I ever was. And I think he was prepared both mentally, physically, and academically to play at Penn State. And I think he did an outstanding job. And he did not let the pressure of being my son interfere in his playing or his performance. And I think that was the key.
Charlie, let's stick with you for a second. During your time at Penn State, the Nittany Lions really transformed from what some people might have considered to be a regional power into a national contender. Now, I think it took the newspapers and the voters and the AP a little bit longer to catch up with that than what was actually going on here in Happy Valley during that time. But what were some of the defining traits of those early Joe Paterno coached teams in the late 60s?
Well, initially, a lot of the opponents we talked to confused us with the University of Pennsylvania and thought we were an Ivy League school until we lined up on the gridiron and had to play. Joe Paterno got his teams ready to play, and we started beating teams that were nationally ranked. I mean, when we beat Miami, that sort of sent a signal. That was a Miami team led by Ted Hendricks, who was a great defensive football player for them. And then we beat UCLA. Gary Beaton was a Heisman Trophy winner. And then we beat Colorado, and they had a Heisman Trophy candidate too. So once we started beating people and playing well, we dominated the East. We could beat the teams in the East like Syracuse, Boston College, West Virginia, and Pitt. We could beat them. And then my sophomore year, we were fortunate enough to play in the Gator Bowl, and we got a chance to play on national TV against a Florida State team. And we were 8-2 at the time. And we went down there, and we came away with a tie because Florida State didn't have enough guts to go for the winner on the 1 yard line, and they decided to kick a field goal rather than try to go for a win. And they were satisfied with getting the tie, and that started giving us the credibility that we thought we needed.
So 1968, 1969, two very at Penn State, 11-0 each year. You look at that backfield along with yourself. You've got Lydell Mitchell. You've got Franco Harris. What was it like? What were practices like? What was the competition like? What was it about that group that didn't show up in the box score, but that elevated you to champions?
Well, Franco Harris, a great football player and individual. Lydell Mitchell, a very tough, excellent running back, great football player and great individual. And one of these, I think, physically tough football players I've ever met. When we played together, I really didn't have much to do with their success because they came in with credibility. They came in with the ability to play, and they were very confident in their ability to play. Franco was very big for a running back. Lydell was just tough for a running back. And they made my job a lot easier. And Penn State, we just ran the ball at people. With a backfield like that, we didn't have to throw too many passes. And we turned it over to the defense. We had a very tough defense. And Joe Paterno, I think, liked playing defense better than offense anyway. So we didn't throw many passes. We just ran the football. And with a backfield like that, why not? And we were successful.
Charlie, you went on to a career in the NFL and then went on to a successful professional career. What are some of the life lessons that you learned at Penn State and in particular from Coach Paterno, that have stayed with you over the years?
Well, Joe Paterno, while he prepared us to win football games, I think his real message was to prepare us for life. Do the little things right and the big things, let the big things take care of themselves. Be respectful of other people's time. Be on time, never be late. Have goals, set standards. Uh, when you cross the blue line and it's time to play football, that's what we want to focus on and that's what we want to do. Set goals for yourself and help your teammates and never do anything to make you or your team look bad. And you put all that together, and I think it prepares you for whatever career you decide to choose in life, and you'll be better prepared for it.
How about you, Tony? Life lessons from Penn State that have stayed with you.
Those are the core lessons. I always joke that Coach Paterno really only taught me one thing I remember about football, and that was when I was a corner in the 2 deep zone, to make it hard for the quarterback to tell if I was going to go to the flat or go deep. That's like the only thing I remember from football. The rest was all those life lessons that stick with you and that I still use even today. He talked about how you're going to have ups and downs, good plays, bad plays, good games, bad games. But one thing I remember, and most of my teammates would say the same, is he always reminded us, you're never as good as you think you are when you win or when something goes well. But you're also never as bad as you think you are when something doesn't go well. Taught us, drilled that into us, me especially, around, you got to make sure that you don't let one bad play turn into a second bad play and have that short memory, especially the position I played. You had to have that. So those things aren't about X's and O's. It's really about how to, really focus yourself and stay mentally focused, and deal with whatever life or football, throws at you. Yeah, that blue line, that was real. When you cross that blue line, you used to tell us, I need you to forget about that exam you have coming up, at least for these few minutes, and or forget about if you argue with your girlfriend or something. This is about football. But the thing that Joe always did when I was there, he knew when everybody had an exam, for example, and he would go drill by drill, and he would wait for the drill to be over. Say, all right, good job, poop, go to your exam. He knew all that stuff. So some of those lessons I took from him, just on how to stay focused, be able to compartmentalize, and switch gears when you had to.
So, Tony, last week we had one of your defensive backfield teammates on the show, Kim Herring. He said one of the defining mantras on that 1994 team was "do your job." We asked him the question. What did that 94 team have that elevated them to a championship team? What sticks out in your mind as to how that team made the leap from 1993 to the 1994 season?
I tell you what, I remember we went to Ohio State midway through the 99 season. It was a terrible weather game. We played them tough, but we lost. And that was after losing to Michigan the week before. And I just remember, I go back to that, and I remember feeling like we said, like, that's it. Everyone had told us when we came to the Big Ten, oh, we might be pretty good, but wait until you play Ohio State and Michigan. And that year we got Ohio State and Michigan. We lost to them both. And we said, no, hold on. And I think we really dug in after that Ohio State loss. And we didn't lose for a long time after that, all the way through the rest of that year, and obviously through the 94 season and a good part in the next season. We ended up with the country's longest winning streak, I'm pretty sure, at that time. So I think it was really just that determination for us to show that, no, we weren't a team that was going to come into the Big Ten and just roll over for these other teams. We were Penn State, and we wanted to prove that to people. I think that's a chip we carried on our shoulders. Now, the part about doing your job, I also think by the time 1994 came around, and we saw how explosive our offense had become with people like Kerry Collins and Kajana Carter and Cal Brady and Bobby Ingram, Freddie Scott. I think we knew on the defensive side of the ball that our job was to just not let stupid things happen. We knew that if we didn't give up a bunch of free big plays to other teams, that we would outscore the other teams. So people always say, oh, we didn't have a dominant defense. And, I would say game in, game out, we figured out ways to win. And we played one tough game at Illinois when we were down big, and we did have to step up as a defense, and we did that. But our job was really just not to let the other team get too many easy ones, and we knew we would win. And the other thing people forget about that year is we had a lot of great players. We also had a lot of injuries, like Kim Herring, great player. He got hurt in that Northwestern game we played. I remember we lost him for the back half of the year. We struggled a lot with injuries. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think only 2 guys started every game on that defense. The corners, me and Brian Miller, who was the other corner. Everyone else, we had to fill in. But we figured out ways to win, and I think that was kind of our mindset on defense. Figure out a way to get it done, know what you got to do your part, and get the ball back to those other guys so they can score more points.
Yeah, Kim touched on that when we talked with him. He said one of the reasons that the defense might have been kind of overshadowed by the offense was the offense would take 2 minutes to score.
Yeah.
You guys were on the field the whole game and didn't get a chance to rest.
Yeah, we'd be like, "Oh, they did it again." Yeah, but that wasn't a bad feeling though when you got to run out there with even more of a cushion.
Well, Tony, let's stick with this topic for a little bit longer. You mentioned the 94 offense. Take us behind the scenes a little bit. What were practices like going against one another? How did you make the offense better and vice versa?
Well, I will say one thing I think they did for us is they made the game seem a lot easier because, lining up against them during, especially for me as a corner on the one-on-one drills, lining up against those receivers and carrying those guys, that was hard. But we knew that, they were out there to make us better, and, we tried to make them better. But I think, of course we were one team, but we had very different personalities, unit by unit. That offense, they knew they were good. They played with a lot of confidence. We used to always joke, even when we took buses, there's offensive bus and defensive bus, and their bus was always like boisterous, loud, they were ready to have fun. And we were more like, all right, we just got to go out there and, do our part and stay focused. So they knew how to have fun. They were good. They were very confident, and they needed that on offense. And they certainly brought that every game. But I think both units figured out what they had to do to help each other get better. And then come game time, we figured out ways to make the combination work, obviously. And it was a fun time.
So I'll throw this question to both of you, and just one of you jump in to answer it. You co-wrote the book titled Playing for Paterno and provided insight into what it was like playing for him. In his foreword to the book, Coach Paterno mentions that out of many father-son duos that played for him, the 2 of you were the first, right? And the 2 of you were the only academic All-Americans to ever play father-son duo for Coach Paterno. Talk a little bit about the book, maybe some of the reaction from fellow lettermen, and what you remember about taking on that project together.
Well, I'll start. I think most people were surprised when they picked up the book. They thought they were going to be reading a football book where we talked about outstanding plays, outstanding games, outstanding performers, and things of that nature. But it turned out to be a book about life, a book about trying to be successful in life, and a book about learning from the game of football. All the little things and intricacies that Paterno tried to teach us were in the book. So one of the things that I get from that is that a lot of my former teammates and players didn't have to read it because they already had heard it before. And its goal was to make you a better human being in addition to a better football player. And if you follow those things, you have success with honor, we have respect for your opponents, and it's not about what football can do for you, but what you can do for the game of football in terms of helping make your life and other people's lives better.
Yeah, for me, the same. I think one of the things my teammates, I think, took away from that as well is how much I learned from them along the way, too. Like I mentioned, some of the things I watched them go through and how I was able to observe that. I watched, I played behind some other great players like Shelly Hammonds, who I know has been here with you guys before, and Leonard Humphreys and those guys. And I had to learn from them. I didn't even really play defense in high school. Joe Paterno came to me one day and says, "Oh, I think I want you to play defense." Of course, yeah. So I had to really learn from those other teammates, people like Lee Rubin, Shelly Hammonds, Leonard Humphreys, and the like. And so I think, when some of them, when they read that, they're like, oh, you remember that? Oh, really? You had to bring up that happened. But it was really because I was sharing, like, yeah, that's how you guys, what you went through as my teammates, helped me to learn and be better over my career. And I was glad to be able to share that, as part of what we went through with the book.
Well, let's stick with the book for a second, John. I want to talk to Charlie and Tony about what did it mean for the two of you to do it together as a father-son project. I know you've Tony, at least when you were at Penn State, you took the opportunity to honor your dad by wearing his number. The relationship.
I got it from OJ McDuffie. I had to wait,
Did you have to buy it from OJ?
I tried.
Yeah. But I mean, tell us a little bit about the relationship. It seems like it's a really strong relationship today.
Yeah, I mean, I think the honor probably goes to me. It was always entertaining. People ask me, well, what was it like, going there after someone like your dad played there? And I tell you what, look, playing football at that level is hard. I don't care how much talent you have, how many stars you had, whatever. Especially back then, I was in recruiting classes with guys like Kerry Collins and Kyle Brady, played 0 as freshmen. Behind me, we had guys like Kajana Carter, played 0 as freshmen. These guys, everyone had to kind of, battle and work out and establish themselves. But for me, I remember I'd walk through that locker room, and I don't even know if we talked about this. On the way to the weight room, they had headshots of all the previous All-Americans. And you know who one of them was. And I just remember I'd be walking in that weight room, like back to work, and I'd look and I'd see a familiar face. And I say, you know what? I can do it. It can be done. And so that just kind of grounded me. It wasn't like pressure, but it was more a proof point that says, you can do this. This is something you just got to keep at it. And it's a hard path to go, I think, for anybody at that level. People turn on the TV or whatever and watch these guys go out. They don't know. Some people don't know like what it took to even get to that point. And and it is something else. One of my prized possessions from Penn State, I have some things. One thing I took back then when you got to first team defense, you got a blue jersey, blue practice jersey. Mine's all like torn up and stuff. I still have it. That's one of my most prized possessions because I remember what it took to get there. And so, yes, we won a lot of games. And by the way, I don't even know if we didn't even know that thing about the games happened until, I don't know, 10, 12 years after it happened, because that just goes to how it was, the thought process was drilled into us. Even Coach Franklin does that now, 1-0, right? That's been the Penn State way forever. Just go out, focus, get the next one, and big things ultimately happen. And I think that's how this happened for us.
I think Tony did a great job. He did a great job on that. But Tony has been prepared to play for Penn State for a long time. It's in his system. It's in his family. And everything we do is sort of connected to number 24 or the name Whitney. If I ever lost my phone or my computer or something.
Don't say any passwords. Don't say
Yeah. That's right. That's exactly right. And I tell you, he did it on his own merits. He was very good at what he did. He was a very good student, very good athlete in more sports than just football. So I'm very proud of how he's positioned himself to be successful in life today. And I think a lot of it have to do with he had the opportunity to play for a guy named Coach Joe Paterno.
Just sticking with the book just for another minute or two, from an emotional perspective, what was it like reflecting on your Penn State experiences? I mean, I'm sure you thought about Penn State a lot, but to go into that much depth, to open up, to be vulnerable, to share about that Penn State experience, just sort of like on an emotional, personal level, especially going through it as father and son. What was it like just, going back and remembering things and then thinking, I still remember this vividly and it still impacts my life. What was that type of experience like for you? We can start with Tony.
Just such deep reflections doing that. I remember the way we would do it. We were working together, working with the author who helped us, and we would just tell stories capture the stories, go back through the memories. And, we talk about how it is so much more than the football part. And I think going through this process with the book was just really a deep reminder of, how much Coach Paterno meant not only to the game of football, to the university, but how much the things he contributed meant to the lives of the people that were touched, his players, and the people that, then we touched. My daughter's a sophomore at Penn State now, and I find myself talking to her through things she's going through. I find myself sounding like how Coach Paterno, would have talked to me, even though she's not playing football. She's getting her dose of some of that guidance as well. So for me, it was just really a deep reminder of how much we should be thankful for what we took away from the experience, way beyond what happened on the football
field. And for me, Coach Paterno has such a major impact on the Pittmans family. He worked so hard at understanding and letting people know how much he cared about our family. He remembered my mom and my dad. He even knew my children's name. And he was very good at trying to make us comfortable in an environment that was not always up to par. Joe Paterno had a major impact on my life. And one thing is, Joe Paterno died on my birthday. And to me, that is kind of meaningful. And I had the opportunity to speak at his memorial service. And at that time, the impact of how he's treated the Pittman family, how he cared for the Pittman family, was unbelievable. He did a great job. He helped us a lot, and we respect him for that, and we thank him a lot for it.
Hey, Charlie, let's stick with you for a second. You returned to Penn State this summer for We Are Weekend. As part of that weekend, you were on the Beaver Stadium tour. You got to celebrate the 50th reunion with your classmates. What did it mean to come back to Penn State and celebrate and to go into Beaver Stadium like that again?
To step foot in that stadium, I was, the enormity of it, the awesomeness of it, to think about what it was like when I first came there. I think Beaver Stadium had seated 45,000 people at its maximum when I was there. And now I'm going to see a stadium that seats 110,000 people. And the turf was just exquisite. The athletes have a great facility there. And if there's one better, I would like to see it because it was just outstanding. And then when you look up and you see the banners of the undefeated teams, Coach Paterno had 5 undefeated teams, and the Pittmans were on 3 of the 5. So we would like to think that we played a major role in helping Penn State get to the point to where it is. And with all goes with a lot of thanks to Coach Joe Paterno and the coaching staff that he put together to make it happen for us.
Well, Charlie, look, the stadium should only fit 45,000 now, but somehow we get 110,000 people into it. So.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
This has been great talking with Charlie and Tony. We've got some more questions, but just wanted to take a minute to thank them, thank everyone for tuning in. This has been really great getting insight from both of you and both of you being willing to share and open up. We were talking earlier this week, or maybe it was last week, about coincidences, Tony. So I think most people have pointed this out or have become aware of this by now. 1994 mirrors the exact same situation this weekend, 5-0, coming off a bye. The game's even on October 15th. You touched on the 94 team a little bit. What do you remember about going into Ann Arbor that day and knowing that, yes, this is one game, but what it could potentially mean for your season?
Yeah, we knew it. We knew it could mean a lot, and people may forget that that team in '94. It was a couple years before that we were there. We were also undefeated, and we played a Miami team at Beaver Stadium. We lost a close game, and that year went downhill quickly, right? Because we felt like wow, we're kind of out of the national championship hunt there. So I remember in '94, remember what had happened against Michigan the year before, people saying, all right, here they go again. They're doing well, but wait till they play Michigan. We were just determined that that was not going to happen again. I'll never forget probably the most memorable, like pregame, still at the hotel gathering we had as a team, just how passionate some of the leaders on that team were. I remember, among other people, Brian Gelsizer, who was, starting middle linebacker. He just got us all together and he said, we are not going to lose this game. So I just think we came into that not hoping we might win, not thinking we're good enough to win. I would say we showed up at the big house that day expecting to win. I think that was the difference. I think prior to that, we were hoping, we thought we were good enough. We knew we had a good shot to win. I think if we're honest, but that's the turning point where I feel like we determined that we expected to beat anybody at that time, and it was just that next level of mental focus I think we brought into that game.
You bring up the '92 game against Miami, and I still have great memories of that game. Remember, they brought in all the extra speakers to bring a lot of noise into Beaver Stadium that day. And I still think their kick returner came out of the end zone at the end of the game and then went back in and took a knee. They called it a touchback instead of what it should have been, a safety. So I don't know if you remember that, Tony.
I do. I remember. That game was pretty memorable, but I do think that fueled us, right, a couple of years later, for sure.
So looking ahead to this weekend, Tony and Charlie, just wondering, what advice would you give to this current team, the current Nittany Lion team, 5-0, going into a top 10 matchup at Michigan? Maybe draw on your experiences from playing for Coach Paterno and kind of some of those pregame speeches. If you were in the locker room with those guys this weekend, what advice would you give to them before you take the field?
You only get so many opportunities to play in big games like this. And you should not let the opportunity slip away. It's very important to protect the football. Don't turn the football over. When you are an offensive player or running back, for example, when you have the football, there's 21 other people out there on the field that want it. And you have to make sure you don't give it to them. And you have to continue to move it down the field. Protect the football. Do the little things right. Don't try to win every play or score a touchdown on every play, but be consistent, persistent, and do the job that you know you're capable of doing. And I think you'll be fine.
Yeah, I would just add, know that, look, these are two good teams, and I expect it's going to be a back and forth affair. And I think the key thing is just know, right, you're going to take some blows, you're going to deliver some blows, but don't let yourself get too rattled. Don't get too excited. Don't get too down. Just keep playing your game. And I think that's something that Penn State teams often in big games have been able to do. And I think this is an opportunity, for these guys to do that.
We've spent an awful lot of time talking about Coach Paterno. You both played for Coach. But one of the things that I think that James Franklin has done a really good job at is connecting the generations that played for different coaches back to the current program. Can you talk a little bit about how he's brought you back into the fold, the interactions that you have with teams nowadays, and just kind of the general involvement that you have as Letterman?
I think he's done an outstanding job with that. Like he tells us that, their facility is our facility. Anytime you come, stop by, stop in, say hello. He invites us to practices. He asks us to meet with our position groups and make sure that we're sharing anything we choose to share with the guys playing our positions these days. I feel like he really has focused on that. I think he really recognizes how important that is for us, really, as Letterman, as well as how much that can benefit the current players. And I really do applaud him for recognizing just how great that is for the entire Penn State community, that he's that welcoming of the folks that play there.
All I can say to that is ditto. Excellent. does an excellent job of doing that and keeping the player and letterman involved in the program. It makes you feel proud that you're a part of something that's potentially can be really great. And I think Coach Coach Franklin is moving his team in the right direction, and I'm supportive for everything that he's doing.
So Tony, Charlie, again, we've been so appreciative of your time tonight. We've really enjoyed this. But before we let you go, just wanted to see if you want to share with the audience, what are you up to today? How are you having an impact? And just kind of how closely are you following Penn State nowadays?
Well, I live in Florida, so it's not real easy to get to State College for a football game. So I watch it on TV. It's in my Google Notes, so everything comes up with Penn State. I read about it. I pull for them. Every car that I have has Penn State license plates on. Everyone knows I'm a Penn State fan, so and I'll be rooting for them all the time. So I'm very supportive.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I'm really close to it now. Like I said, my daughter Isabella goes there. She's a sophomore there, and I feel like through her, I get live downloads of what happens at all the games when I can't get back. And she's really enthusiastic about it. But of course, I think once you have that blue and white blood in your veins, you kind of stick with it. But it's really been great to see. Where the program is. I mean, the atmosphere there when it's a big game, is second to none. And I think it really is great to see that Penn State's still, making such a big impact on the game for sure.
I think the word is unrivaled.
Unrivaled. Yeah.
Unrivaled. And it's just fantastic to be a part of that.
John, given the Pittmans record at Penn State, we got to find a way to get Isabella in the starting lineup. I mean, that's sauce right there.
Yeah, get her on the sideline. Staff assistant, something.
Yeah. Hey, Tony, when are you going to fire the podcast up again?
You remember that? Yeah, that's funny. Way back in 2005, me and one of my former teammates, Phil Collins, we actually started what I think was the first Penn State football podcast, but we almost went undefeated that year. If you remember, we lost to a team called Michigan with 1 second left that year. But hey, let's not let that happen again. But that was fun. And I like to think we started something that's turned into a lot of big things now with people doing a lot of podcasts and stuff. But he and I did that for a number of years. It's fun.
Yeah, well, if the clock operator does their job this weekend, we won't have that problem. So, Charlie, Tony, again, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for sharing, and we've just enjoyed this conversation so much. We'll remember this night for a long time.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Guys. Thank you guys for having us.
Real pleasure for having us. Thank you for having us.
Take care. All right, John, that's one of the highlights. I mean, look, it seems like we say this every week, right? But we got to talk to Tony and Charlie Pittman tonight, and that's that. Speaking of unrivaled, right? This is going to be an unrivaled episode in Football Letter Live history.
I mean, they're Penn State lettermen, but they're also Penn State lettermen who helped shape the football program. Penn State is what it is today in large part to Charlie and his generation and the work and everything that they did in. And then you see Tony come in and his generation building on that, appreciating the generations that came before them, helping to make the current generation possible. And so, we talk all the time, Penn State tradition. Just the Pittman family. We talked before about iconic numbers at Penn State. The same can also be said for names. You say the name Pittman, people automatically know what you're talking about and who you're talking about.
Absolutely. John, one of the themes I've noticed for this year, and I don't know that I've noticed it as much in previous years, but how many of our football lettermen have come onto this show and described themselves as fans now, right? I mean, they're actually they're actively following the team, right? Charlie's sitting down in Florida watching every game. And it just, that seems to have become a theme this year with how fired up our lettermen still are about Penn State football.
Yeah, and I think there are a couple of reasons for that. One, I think, the lessons that they've learned are still being taught at Penn State. I mean, Tony talked about his daughter being at Penn State. Kim said the same thing last week. I think, the highest praise that you can give an institution is that, you send your son or daughter there and trust them and their care. So I think that, even though generations differ, like the same lessons are being taught. And to the question that you asked earlier, James Franklin knows that tradition and history is important. He's recognized that. He's not just, reached out to them casually. Like it's an active decision on his part to make sure that lettermen stay connected to the program. And so I think the fact that they know they're welcome at Penn State anytime, that helps. Sometimes you read stories and say, you say like former Nittany Lion cornerback. Like to me, you're not former, like you're a Nittany Lion cornerback, you're a Nittany Lion for life. And so I think Charlie and Tony are a really good embodiment of that.
Absolutely. Well, look, I think our producer, Vincent Longaro, is giving us a cue here by running this PowerPoint. It's time to go to him to take us around campus. Vincent, how are you?
I'm doing great, Paul. That was not a cue whatsoever. The less time I'm on screen, probably the better for this show.
Yeah, look at that one. Micah Parsons, Saquon Barkley dominating in the NFL over the past couple weeks. Vincent, take us around campus and let us know what some of our other teams are up to.
Yeah, so again, continuing to impress across Penn State athletics. Field hockey, as we showed there, is up to number 4 in the country. Volleyball, right there. I mean, they're number 14, but like they should easily be in the top 10 because of just the gauntlet that is the Big Ten in women's volleyball. The soccer teams in the thick of it in Big Ten play. Women's soccer, I believe, is back in the top 25 this week at number 25 after a couple of rough games, but they're always going to be in contention for a Big Ten title, Big Ten tournament, stuff like that. So a lot of great things happening across campus with the Penn State athletic teams as usual.
One of the things I love too, Vincent, is how our chapters get involved. I know the Central Ohio chapter had a game watch for the women's soccer team, and I know we had some pictures from that. But our chapters are really getting involved, and I think you have some shout outs for them.
Yeah, I do. Bringing up here on the slides the Florida Gulf Coast chapter with just a wonderful job in Hurricane Ian, donations and help down there. Obviously, everyone impacted by that. Just a great job they did in organizing, donations, volunteering, stuff like that. Go to all their social channels to check out more about that. You mentioned game watch parties as well. We'll have a clip here in just a second from our New York City chapter from one of their game watch parties a couple weeks ago. You can't say enough about the job our chapters do in the work they do in bringing Penn Staters together no matter where they're at. And I will bring up that video right now. So you get in a little bit of Beaver Stadium no matter where you're at across the country with our chapters. So be sure to go to alumni.psu.edu/groups to check out all the great work and get involved with the chapter in your area, of course.
Yeah, shout out to Mike McHugh for sending that video in from the New York City chapter. Great show tonight, Vince. Thanks for jumping on. Let's bring John back out here. John, take us home.
Well, I'm wondering, how did that video end? It said "we are," and then it just went to fade it out. I'm guessing it ended Penn State. So, but yes, Mike McHugh, good friend of ours, great chapter leader in New York. So a couple things. We'll have the game day email sending Saturday. It'll get you ready for kickoff, game preview, videos, photos, everything you need to know. We also just wanted to give a shout out to John Black. We had a Penn Stater share a photo of him at the United States Marine Corps concert. And so, as you can imagine, John's staying very closely connected to Penn State and wanted to thank Marianne Knutson for sharing that photo with us. So again, game day email going Saturday. We'll have the member email coming Monday. We're heading to Michigan, the Roar Tour. You can show up the day of the event. Saturday, we'll be there 9 a.m. sharp.
Right.
We expect Penn Staters to show up like 6 a.m. probably and wondering like, where is the tent? Why aren't we ready? And so big weekend in Michigan. Thanks to Brody Schultz. Again, thanks to Charlie Pittman, Tony Pittman. Tonight was really fun. Next week will be another good episode. We'll look forward to homecoming. But yeah, tonight was good. Charlie and Tony Pittman and Brody. Thank you all so much.
Absolutely. Tune in to next week's episode where it's a little bit of a theme we have going on here with Cornerback Stephon Morris is going to join us. We're going to feature the Alumni Blue Band Association with Randy Seeley and Tom Roberts joining us. It's homecoming week next week, and so we look forward to welcoming Penn Staters back to Happy Valley. Thanks for tuning in and for all you do for the university, for the glory, and for the future. We are
Penn State.